So as you can see, the latest model from VITURE, the VITURE Luma Pro, are here, and after spending about a week testing these guys out, I definitely have some thoughts. And last week I did a video talking about how you could use the original VITURE Pro glasses with your Switch 2 by using the Pro mobile dock, and at the end of that video I sort of mentioned that even if you were in the market for a pair of glasses like this, that you might want to hold off just a little bit longer, and well, it's been a little bit longer, and now with the embargo lifted, I can now talk about the VITURE Pro's successor, the VITURE Luma Pro. They sent me this updated model with a few accessories a few weeks back, and in doing some testing over the past couple of weeks, I can definitely confirm that this is a stylish and functionally improved upgrade over the original VITURE Pros, but yeah, that's what today's video is all about, is what actually comes in the box if you pick up the VITURE Luma Pros and what you can expect from that experience, how it stacks up against its predecessor, and for our purposes, looking pretty narrowly at gaming performance when you have it hooked up to something like the Switch 2 or the Steam Deck. So first, let's go ahead and kick this off by taking a look at the box and what's included if you actually order a pair of these for yourself. As usual, the packaging is totally top-notch with Apple-like levels of quality for unboxing the glasses. And inside, just like the VITURE Pros, you will find the glasses themselves, a nice hard shell case to protect them along with a cleaning cloth, multiple nose pads that you can adjust for fit which are now magnetic, which I thought was pretty nice, and also a rubber cover for the magnetic connection for the glasses themselves so you don't accidentally pinch your hair whenever you have them hooked up, a magnetic USB-C connection cable, and the requisite documentation including things like a quick start guide and kind of an overview of all of the different ways that you can use these glasses. And on the specs front, these are about 50% sharper than the prior version, which is the VITURE Pro that I have right here, and they bill it as a 4K-like display that presents a screen that's 15% larger as well. It has a 52-degree field of view versus the original's 46 degrees, 1200p resolution, 1000 nits of brightness, and all of this comes together to bring you a display size that is 152 inches rather than the 135 inches that you got from the original VITURE Pros. And to top it all off on the audio front, it does have Harman-tuned speakers built into the arms, which I can't remember if they had Harman on the originals or not, but yeah, they definitely still sound clear and not really as tinny as you might expect for speakers this small. Also, I know some of you are curious about the ability to have IPD adjustments built in, kind of like you would get from like the Quest 3, but unfortunately these do not have IPD adjustments that are built into it like the focal knobs, which are still present and actually improved. However, what they did do is offer these in two different sizes. The regular size is for up to 70 IPD, while the large size of these glasses is up to 74 IPD, which is great because that does provide some more flexibility for fit. Combine that with the ergonomic nose pads that you've got here, and also the fact that they've included tilt adjustable temples, and it's a lot easier to get a better fit with these than it was in the prior model. And from a raw aesthetic standpoint, these also have an LED light strip on the left arm for a little bit of extra style. And once you get these out of the box and in hand, even before you power them on to test them out, there are some differences that become immediately apparent. For starters, they definitely feel lighter and more flexible than the original VITURE Pro. That's not to say the original had bad build quality, far from it. It felt very beefy, but it also felt a little bit heavier, and it also felt like it didn't have the same flexibility and give that you might want for a pair of glasses that ostensibly you're going to be taking off and putting on repeatedly. And I definitely appreciated that lightness, and even though I was a little bit concerned about the build quality, I actually spent some time just sort of like torquing and twisting and bending these to see if I could get them to break. Not in a super aggressive way, just the amount that you might normally have when you're, taking these things off and putting them back on and putting them in a case and that kind of thing over and over, and I never got the impression that they were going to snap or break or anything like that. And while I was in the process of doing that, I got to take a closer look at those tilt adjustable temples, and I have to say that's a bigger deal than you might imagine. Because before, I'm not going to say that it was hard to get a good view of the picture, because for the most part it was fine, but every now and then I felt like I was clipping a little bit of the top of the image or a little bit of the bottom, but with these combined with the adjustable nose pads, it really is a lot easier to get a fit that's going to keep the view perfectly centered for your vision, so you can make sure you have a good experience if you're watching a movie or playing a game or something like that. But beyond the build quality and increased flexibility for fit, there's also an additional control on the right ear stem that's used to disable the newly added LED lighting effects on the left arm, or to enable or disable the oleophobic shade to block out most of the light. And again, they didn't send over any wild shade covers this time, but I do think they have one that's a little bit more subdued than the crazy weird eye ones that I got with the last ones, but yeah, I think that's something you can order separately if you would like, but honestly, that shade does a great job of blocking out the light anyway, so unless you're hardcore looking for absolute immersion or you want to block out as much light as humanly possible, I would not call them a necessity. Speaking personally, I actually like to have some grounding in reality when I use glasses like this, so I can continue to use my phone if I need to, if I'm hooked up to the Switch 2 or the Steam Deck or something like that, but yeah, ultimately it's a matter of personal preference. And when it comes to the buttons and controls that are on the left arm, you've basically got one long rocker button that you can use for adjusting both the volume and the brightness, and then a shorter button that you can use to cycle through different picture modes, or if you want to swap the use of that rocker button to be adjusting volume versus adjusting brightness, that's how you do it. It's all pretty intuitive out of the box, but if you need a quick refresher, the included quick start guide is pretty comprehensive, or if you need something deeper, it does actually link you through QR code to some online documentation as well. So yeah, out of the box it already feels like a pretty demonstrable upgrade to the original, and certainly in line with what we've come to expect from VITURE, where the build quality is top notch, it's got some increased functionality, but ultimately, how do those new OLED panels actually do, and is there a major difference when you're actually using these versus the panels on the original pair? Well, let's talk about performance for a minute. While they did include another Pro mobile dock in the shipment, since I already had one that I knew worked with the Switch 2, I decided I would just go ahead and hook it up to that one and get started as quickly as possible to see how gameplay actually looked on these new glasses. And after connecting the Switch 2 to the Pro Mobile dock and then plugging in the glasses to one of two different glasses ports on the Pro Mobile dock, I had no connection problems at all to speak of, and it really did offer incredibly sharp detail and rich colors, which is great for a game like Kirby, and I actually took some time to flip through the different color profiles as well to kind of see how much I could warm it up or cool it down, and it really is awesome that you can go ahead and customize this however you'd like if you do prefer a more muted color palette to the hyper-saturated kind of visuals that I personally prefer. But more than just the increased sharpness and clarity, the thing that really stood out to me was that step up in screen size. And at first, I kind of thought that the step up from 135 to 152 for the screen size would be pretty negligible and not really that noticeable, considering you're already wearing glasses that have a display floating in front of your face. But honestly, it is very noticeable, and that's not to say that the original VITURE Pros are bad, far from it, but side by side, or if you try putting one on right after the other, the difference is pretty clear. And combining this increase in screen real estate with the sharpness of the new displays, with the color profiles to warm everything up, means you can make a game like Kirby look just like retina-searingly gorgeous. And maybe predictably, nothing in this experience is lost when you connect it to a Steam Deck either, although I will say I kind of prefer using these with the Steam Deck to the Switch 2. And the only reason I say that is because it's slightly less messier, because you don't have to have a Pro Mobile dock or anything like that. You can just take that USB-C cable and plug it directly into the top of your Steam Deck and be ready to go. However, they do offer a USB-C charging adapter dongle, which basically just adds another USB-C input for power, so this means you can hook up the glasses and a power adapter or beefy backup battery to your Steam Deck at the same time to pretty much keep the party going indefinitely. But while I appreciate the simpler connection to the Steam Deck for enjoying an accessory like this, you also do have to do a little bit more tinkering when it comes to game resolutions here and there. Generally, I just stuck with 1080p, which seemed to be the best experience for most titles, but yeah, that's kind of the trade-off for all the flexibility that you have with the Steam Deck, is that it is going to take more tinkering than the relative simplicity of the Switch 2. Or I guess in a nutshell, I guess it would be safe to say that you get more of a plug-and-play experience from a hardware perspective when it comes to the Steam Deck, and more of a plug-and-play experience from a software perspective when it comes to the Switch 2. But in either scenario, I promise you will definitely appreciate having what is effectively a private theater for playing your favorite games on the go. Also, speaking of taking these on the go, particularly for things like airline travel or long car rides where you're going to be playing for an extended period, I did want to talk about the comfort just a little bit. Not just in a general way, but if you're somebody who has neck issues, or if you're just an aging millennial like I am, who maybe doesn't relish the idea of just like staring in a weird position at a handheld device for an extended period of time, these are a godsend when it comes to comfort. And because you can just sort of keep your head and neck straight and stare straight ahead to play games instead of having to look down, or maybe just like crane into an uncomfortable position to make sure you can continue to enjoy like a game that you're playing or a movie that you're watching if you're using this with like your phone or something, it really is a tremendous upgrade. Speaking personally, I do have an issue with like my C6 vertebrae, which isn't debilitating or anything like that, but it is something that does make me more aware of how I'm positioning my neck and head, so if you're somebody who's in the same boat, I really can't overstate just how much these are great, not just for immersion, but also for providing a comfortable experience. But while my experience with the Luma Pros has been largely positive, there were a couple of hiccups and at least one concern that I had that isn't really an indictment of VITURE so much as it is Nintendo, but yeah, let's go ahead and talk about some hiccups and concerns for a second. And the first thing is actually pretty minor, but it's whenever I was trying to test out the LED light strip on the left arm over here. You can kind of see it here even though it's not powered on right now. At one point when I was trying to adjust it using that new button that they put on the right arm, I did find that after I had it disabled that it would still activate and light up when I was adjusting the volume, which was kind of odd but hardly a deal breaker since it's more of an aesthetic nicety, I guess, but maybe this is kind of a small issue that could be addressed in a firmware update. But the thing is, I only encountered this one time, and when I tried to recreate it by unplugging everything and plugging everything back in, I couldn't get that problem to trigger again, so maybe I just did something odd like press two buttons at the same time or confused it or something, I'm not sure. And the other weird hiccup that I hit was when I was cycling through different games or powering the Switch 2 off and back on, normally the image comes up pretty instantaneously after about a second or two, but in at least one instance, I think I was playing Cyberpunk 2077, it would not produce the image, and it took about 5 to 10 seconds for it to pop up, so I ended up unplugging it and plugging it back in, and that did restore it. So I'm not sure if this is another situation where I jostled it, or if it is something weird about the Switch, because I did not have this problem plugging into the Steam Deck at all, and while it might have been an isolated incident, that does kind of lead me to the larger concern that I have when it comes to using this with the Switch 2, and that is how that Pro Mobile dock is going to hold up long term. Now, I kind of mentioned earlier that I think this is more of an indictment from Nintendo than it is of VITURE, and the reason I say that is because we have seen reports coming out that Nintendo's doing firmware updates that effectively limit the Switch 2's ability to talk to different docks. And with that in mind, I don't think it's 100% outside the realm of possibility that one day Nintendo conceivably could release an update that makes this inoperable with the Pro Mobile dock and by extension the Luma Pro glasses. I don't think it's immediately likely, and I haven't seen that happen with any of the testing that I've done so far, but it is something worth considering. Although even if this scenario did manifest, I don't think it's outside the realm of possibility also that maybe VITURE just creates a firmware update that works around this, or maybe they just go with Nintendo directly and work something out, considering they have already partnered with the likes of Harman, Sony, and Nvidia. And it's not like they're not already a well-established name in the space. But even if the worst case scenario happened and I couldn't use these with my Switch 2, I probably still want to hold on to them just because you could still use it with like phones, tablets, your laptop, Steam Deck. I mean, it still has a lot of use cases beyond just the Switch 2, but it is something worth mentioning if you were looking at these glasses and thinking, hey, I'm only going to use these exclusively with the Switch 2, might be food for thought. But even taking those hiccups and hypothetical concerns into account, I still think the Luma Pros represent a definitive upgrade over the original Pros. Not a revolutionary upgrade, but certainly an evolutionary upgrade in terms of comfort, performance, and flexibility. Magnetic nose pads and tilt-adjustable temples themselves might have been reason enough for me to consider the upgrade, but honestly throw in that expanded view and the enhanced displays and the fact that they make colors even richer through selectable profiles, and yeah, I have to say that I'm pretty impressed with what I've seen here. And I think it's safe to say that VITURE's definitely not resting on their laurels here, just riding on the success from their prior model, and honestly I can't wait to see what they come up with next. And if you're in the market for a pair of these yourself, I should have links in the description below which should be affiliate links, which if you use those obviously it helps out the channel and I appreciate that. But if you have any questions or there's something I didn't address very well in this video, just let me know and I'll see if I can get you an answer. And if I can't get you an answer, I'll reach out to the VITURE people to see if they can provide an answer. And as far as what's coming up for the channel, I do have my full Switch 2 review finally coming out here in a few days, and then next week we'll be taking a look at some of the most anticipated games for the Switch 2 for the rest of 2025, so make sure you stay tuned for that. As always, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch videos here, it really means a lot to me. Have an amazing day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.